I am a ninth grade student at the White Plains High School. She said, while it should not matter, I would like to mention that I'm a white girl. I read in the paper of your misfortune and of your suffering. And I read that if you had sneezed, you would have died. I'm simply writing you to say that I'm so happy that you didn't sneeze. And I want to say tonight, I too am happy that I didn't sneeze, because if I had sneezed, I would have been around here in 1960 when students all over the South started sitting in at lunch counters. And I knew then that they were sitting in, they were really standing up for the best in the American dream, taking the whole nation back to those great wells of democracy which were dug deep by the founding fathers in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. If I had sneezed, I would have been around here in 1961 when we decided to take a ride for freedom and ended segregation in interstate travel. If I had sneezed, I would have been around here in 1962 when Negroes in Albany, Georgia decided to straighten their backs up. And whenever men and women straighten their backs up, they are going somewhere, because a man can't ride your back unless it is bent. If I had sneezed, I would have been around here in 1963 when black people of Birmingham, Alabama aroused the conscience of this nation and brought it to being the Civil Rights Bill. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have had a chance later that year in August to try to tell America about a dream that I had. If I had sneezed, I would have been down in Selma, Alabama to see the great movement there. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't be in Memphis to see a community rally around those brothers who are suffering. I'm so happy that I didn't sneeze. And they were telling me, no, it doesn't matter now. It really doesn't matter what happens now. I left Atlanta this morning as we got started on the plane. There were 6 of us. The pilot said over the public address system, we're sorry for the delay, but we have Dr. Martin Luther King on the plane. And to be sure that all of the bags were checked, and to be sure that nothing would be wrong on the plane, we had to check out everything carefully. And we've had the plane protected and guarded all night. And then I got into Memphis. And some began to say the threats, or talk about the threats that were out. What might happen to me from some of our sick white brothers. Well, I don't know what would happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. And I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over. And I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. And so I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. My eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. And as you know, the very next day, while standing on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel, James Earl Ray took Dr. King's life. In a sermon to a congregation not more than 4 weeks ahead of the assassination, he told that congregation that he had been thinking about his own death, that he had been thinking about his own funeral, but he said, I'm not thinking about it in a morbid sense. I'm just thinking, what is it that I would want said? So he went on to tell them, if any of you are around when I have to meet my day, I don't want a long funeral. And if you get somebody to deliver a eulogy, I don't want to talk too long. What is it that I would want to say? Tell them not to mention that I have a Nobel Peace Prize. That's not important. Tell them not to mention that I have 300 or 400 other awards. That's not important. Tell them not to mention where I went to school. I just want somebody to be able to say on that day that Martin Luther King Jr. gave his life trying to serve others. I want you to be able to say on that day that Martin Luther King Jr. tried to love somebody. I want you to be able to say on that day that I did try in my lifetime to feed those who were hungry. That I did try in my lifetime to visit those who were sick. that I did try in my lifetime to visit those behind prison bars. Yes, if you want to say that I was a drum major, say that I was a drum major for peace, that I was a drum major for justice, that I was a drum major for righteousness, and all of the other shallow things will not matter. I won't have any money to leave behind. I won't have the fine and luxurious things of life to leave behind. I'll just have a committed life to leave. And that's all I've got to say. That was then. This is now. I think if Dr. King were alive today and someone were to ask him, what is it? What would be your position on race relations today? I think he would answer that question by pointing up three different attitudes toward race, three different attitudes to answer that question. The first he would point up would be the optimistic view. An optimist, as you know, is someone who looks on the bright side of things. The optimist would say that we've elected a black president, we've got pretty much all the problems solved now, and all we have to do is sit comfortably by the wayside and wait for the coming of the inevitable. The other view would be that of a pessimist. And as you know, a pessimist is someone who looks on the dark side of things. The pessimist would say that we've created more problems than we have solved. In fact, the deep rumblings of discontent are indicative of the fact that we've created more problems than we have solved. But I think Dr. King would take the realistic view. He would combine the truisms of the two opposites. He would take the view of the optimist and say, yes, we've come a long, long way. But he would also combine the view of the pessimist and say that we have a long, long way to go. We can do this. It can be done. If I could help somebody, as I pass along, if I could cheer somebody with a word or a song, if I could show somebody that he's traveling wrong, then my living will not be in vain. If I could do my duty as a Christian ought, if I could bring salvation to a world once brought, if I could spread the message as the Master taught, then my living will not be in vain. Thank you for inviting me.